I'll be honest, I've bought a few cheap, budget-sized dust collectors for my garage shop, and every time I turned them on the first week, I was already hearing that annoying whine of a motor that just can't keep up, the bag filling up faster than I could empty it, and a whole lot of dust still hanging in the air. It's a classic case of trying to save a few bucks and ending up with a mess you have to clean twice. That's why the first question I ask myself before even pulling a product off the shelf is whether it's a smarter buy or just another disappointment in disguise. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The SUPERMAX Tools 11/2 HP Dust Collector, model SUPMX 821200, is pitched as a compact, workshop-grade solution that can hook up to a table saw, a router, or a small belt sander. The idea is simple. You want a single unit that can handle the dust output of a typical hobbyist or light-duty woodshop without taking up the floor space of a full-size industrial collector. On paper, a 11.5 horsepower motor sounds enough to pull a decent volume of air through a 6-inch hose, and the unit's footprint is small enough to sit under a workbench. But let's dig into what that means once you actually plug it in. I set up the collector in a 12 by 15-foot garage that already has a small workbench, a 10-inch table saw, and a 4-inch router table. I ran a standard 6-inch flexible hose from the collector to the table saw's dust port, and then tried the same with the router. The first thing you notice is the sound level. It's louder than a typical handheld vacuum, but it isn't a scream that makes you wince. It's that steady, mechanical hum you expect from a small motor, and it sits somewhere in the middle of the noise spectrum for similar devices. If you're already wearing hearing protection while you're cutting, you probably won't notice it much more. In terms of suction, the collector does a respectable job with the table saw. When I ran an inch plywood panel through a rip cut, most of the sawdust was drawn straight into the hose, and the work area stayed relatively clean. The bag filled at a pace that matched what you'd expect from a mid-sized shop. You'll have to check it every half hour or so during a serious cutting session. The router, however, told a different story. Because routers tend to generate finer particles and a higher velocity of dust, the 11.5 HP motor struggled to keep the bag from filling up quickly. After about 15 minutes of steady routing, the bag was noticeably bulging, and I could still see a fine haze in the air. That tells you the collector is more suited to larger, coarser debris rather than the fine dust that a router creates. One hidden trade-off that shows up once you start using the unit regularly is the hose stiffness. The 6-inch hose that comes with the SUPMX 821200 is fairly flexible, which is great for getting around obstacles, but it also means it can collapse a bit under suction. In my setup, the hose would sometimes kink near the table saw's dust port if I didn't keep it straight, and that reduced airflow noticeably. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something you have to be aware of and maybe invest in a slightly more rigid hose if you have a layout that forces bends. Now, who should actually consider buying this thing? If you're a hobbyist who spends a few hours a week on a table saw or a small planer, and you want a tidy solution that fits under a bench, the SUPERMAX collector can be a decent fit. It gives you a step up from a simple shop vac without the footprint or price tag of a larger, industrial-grade system. It also works well if your primary concern is keeping the floor clean from chips and shavings rather than capturing every single fine particle. For people who are just starting a garage shop and have limited space, the compact size and the fact that it plugs directly into a standard 120-volt outlet are appealing. On the flip side, if you run a more serious woodworking operation, or if you rely heavily on routers, sanders, or dust-producing tools that create a lot of fine particulate, you'll probably end up wishing you had a higher capacity unit. The 2.6-star rating from nearly 300 reviewers suggests that a sizable chunk of owners ran into similar frustrations. The motor can feel underpowered for continuous, heavy-duty use, and the bag fills faster than expected when dealing with fine dust. Also, if you're looking for a system that can handle multiple machines at once, the single-port design means you'll need a manifold or a splitter, which adds complexity and can further reduce suction. Practical strengths are easy to point out. The unit is lightweight enough to move around without a dolly, so you can reposition it as your shop layout changes. The built-in handle is sturdy, and the bag is A.